came up with a chant or a phrase that was saying, Kufa Makanga, Kufa Dereva. That thing was a very, very fundamental principle of law that says there will be no selective prosecution. If people have messed, then both have to be held accountable. And you find the question of, and you'll find that in many jurisdictions, selective prosecution is a very, very strong defense that an accused person can raise and be acquitted. And finally, there was an original sin in the whole thing. And the original sin is not...
Welcome, Senator Omtata. How was the process? Was it fair enough?
Well, the process was fundamentally flawed. To begin with, we did not apply Article 150 Clause 2, which says that the procedure for the impeachment of the president shall apply with necessary amendments or stuff like that. We cannot apply the procedure for the president, who is immune from prosecution under Article 143, to the impeachment of the DP, who is not immune from criminal or civil proceedings. And the reason is very simple. You know, some of the charges were of a nature that required law enforcement to deal with. If it was the president, that would be okay. But to bring those charges against the vice president, who is not immune, and therefore those charges could be taken to the law enforcement and also to the courts, was unfair. So we did not accord him the proceedings. Number two, when he fell sick, and we still had enough time until Saturday, we don't see why we could not allow him a chance to be heard on Saturday. And even that date of Saturday was wrong, because the timeline that was being applied was a timeline under when the Senate decided to go by the committee. When the Senate goes by plenary, there's no timeline set. So the only timeline that we could have is to go back to Article 259 and I think Clause 8, where it says that if the Constitution does not allocate time, then the thing that is supposed to be done should be done in the shortest time possible. So the Senate would have considered the issues, and since he had asked for Tuesday, we would come back on Tuesday and review. Impeachments in the USA take even months, because it's a serious issue. You are trying to get somebody out of office and in a manner that he will never be able to hold office again. So I think it was not fair. The charges were flimsy. The mover himself admitted that he had a prima facie case on all issues. He did not admit that he had any concrete case. He had proved nothing. So I don't see why that was done. And when I asked the mover of the motion whether he knew the difference between a censure motion and an impeachment motion, the mover chose not to answer that question. And to me it was fundamental, because we're basically dealing with a censure motion framed as an impeachment motion. The threshold was very low. But I find that not a good thing. And but I think the way there was a bit of some decorum in the House. But I think the issue of the procedural equation, whether the former DP should have been allowed the time to recover in hospital, should have been answered by the Speaker, not by the being put to a vote. Because it was a procedural motion that should have been decided by the Speaker. But that's now what under the bridge. And I hope that going forward, Parliament will step up to the plate and come up with a proper law on impeachment, which takes on board the constitutional provisions that the framers of the Constitution put in place, so that we don't have anybody suffering the same fate that Mr. Gachagua has suffered.
What do you suggest?
Well, first of all, I suggest that the threshold, we make a distinction between an impeachment and a vote of no confidence. A vote of no confidence is one that requires no heavy proof, because you simply force somebody out of office, he can come back. An impeachment is a death sentence. So the threshold is very high. And we must be able to achieve that threshold whereby, if it is gross, it must be gross. And I don't think that lowering the level to where it is not good. The other thing that you found that out of public participation, the Kenyans came up with a chant or a phrase that was saying, Kufa Makanga, Kufa Dereva. That thing was a very, very fundamental principle of law that says there will be no selective prosecution. If people have messed, then both have to be held accountable. And you find the question of, and you'll find that in many jurisdictions, selective prosecution is a very, very strong defense that an accused person can raise and be acquitted. And finally, there was an original sin in the whole thing. And the original sin is not one Gachagua. The original sin is that document which the Kenya Kwanza coalition the coalition agreement among the Kenya Kwanza parties, which began with the same divisive politics of saying dynasty versus hustler. It matured into sharing, government of shares, which is totally unconstitutional. And so that's the original sin. And Gachagua was basically an acolyte. There were high priests, Wetangula, Ruto, Mudavadi, this man of Chap and others who signed that agreement. Those are the high priests of this thing. Gachagua was just an acolyte, and I don't think an acolyte should be condemned in the absence of the high priest. So the whole thing was, to me, was a political charade that marks a very, very sad day in his history in this country. And remember, it is the first time ever anywhere that a vice president is being impeached. That should also speak volumes, because a vice president is an assistant to the master. And I want to demonstrate some of the issues that came up. There were sensational issues that came. There were things that were sensational and emotional, yes, but the threshold for me did not meet it. Some of the things happened long before he became deputy president. And there's a ruling by the Supreme Court where it says that matters of eligibility to run for office are supposed to be determined by the IBC before an election is held. Once an election is held, that matter is dead. It cannot be raised. So to be able to raise that matter before Gachagua, that maybe some time back before he became vice president, he did ABCD, is not good. He may not be a good man, but as for me, I took an oath to defend the Constitution of Kenya, and the Constitution of Kenya says that you have to give the devil his due. The law applies, everybody has got the right, equal benefits under the law, and the law applies equally to all. That's why what we mean by give the devil his due.
No, what next for former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua?
You have to try the courts, but given the level of state capture, I don't see him having a very good chance. But let us wait and see what happens. But at least he should have been given a hearing, at least to defend himself. Even me, I had questions for him to clarify, and I didn't get the chance to ask him those questions. Yeah. So I voted no to all the charges, because I don't believe that I can live with my conscience condemning a man to such a sentence when I'm not convinced above reasonable doubt.
Mashujaa Day is coming. On 20th, we'll be celebrating Mashujaa Day. Online, rumors are going that the new deputy president will be, introduced, will be mentioned on Mashujaa Day. There are proposed names going viral on the X platform. Just to mention a few names: Professor Kindiki, Muranga Governor, Anne Waiguru, among the key, likely names to fit in to replace Deputy Rigathi Gachagua. Do you feel like do they stand a chance to become the next DP?
Well, I'm not really interested in who becomes the next DP. I'm interested about Adani. I'm interested about how Ruto is mortgaging this country, and I'm concerned that he should be stopped. That's what my concern is. I don't care who becomes the next VP, and I think he will get a lapdog for him, for a VP. But for me, my concern is that the country is being mortgaged and Ruto needs to be stopped, like yesterday.
How can that be done? How do you propose?
Well, some of us are in the courts. We are fighting to stop some of those things. And we also, I think that there has to be a way that Ruto must serve one term. He should not be allowed to serve a second term. Yeah, he has got no capacity to govern a country. He is just out to destroy this country, and we can't allow it.
All right, thank you so much. As we wind up, how are you planning to celebrate Mashujaa Day? Will you be joining, Kenyans at Uhuru Park for the parallel Mashujaa celebration?
I have a funeral of a nephew who was found dead in a swimming pool at Starehe. He was a former student at Starehe. So we are burying him on Saturday. So I might not be able to participate, but I'm here to decide how to do. Okay. Yeah. Thank
you so much for your time.
God bless.
God bless you as well. Thank you.
That is public execution. What has happened today is public execution. We have
pale ilikuwa mvutano kidogo.
Haina shida.
Haina shida sawa. Hii ni digital, nadhani umeona yetu SPMs, umeona siasa, umeona sawa. Yes. Senator